In the last episode of Declassified, we talked about how banks create money out of thin air. We had a close look at this mysterious role of high street banks. We saw that the moment a bank decides to give you a loan, it manufactures new money by simply clicking a few buttons on a computer, and your loan is ready. We covered that in our last episode. We suggest you have a quick look at it before coming back to the sequel here. You will find the link in the description below. Now, in this episode, we will dive deeper into this unusual subject. We will talk about why people are never told about this incredible role of banks. Thanks for tuning in. This is Nadim. You're watching Empire Diaries. Let's find out the hidden agenda behind this 100-year-old banking mystery. First, a quick recap so that we can move ahead with clarity. So, by now, we know that banks are tasked by some higher authority to manufacture money out of thin air. But the banking theory that explains this mysterious role of banks was brushed aside under the carpet almost 100 years ago. Since then, it has only been talked about in hush hush tones. It is called the credit creation theory of banking. This theory clearly shows that banks don't just take deposits and lend out loans, they play a far bigger role in economy. Their purpose is to create new money and release it into the economy to keep society running. Take note here that we are talking about non cash money, which comprises 95 to 97% of the total money supply. The 3 to 5% cash money supply is produced by central banks and governments. You must be wondering why this theory was sidelined, right? We will go into it, but before that, we first need to quickly look at the timeline of events. Let's go back to the time of the credit creation theory. This theory has been around in various forms throughout 5,000 years of banking history, but it jumped into prominence towards the end of the 19th century. From then until the 1930s, the credit creation theory was the accepted idea. It means at that time, the banking industry and economic circles accepted the fact that banks create money out of nothing, like magic. The theory has been supported by many high profile economists, such as Irving Fisher, Henry McLeod, Joseph Schumpeter, and most recently, Richard Werner. Strangely, during the 1930s, it was decided to dump the credit creation theory and replace it with a new theory. It's called the fractional reserve theory of banking. The fractional reserve theory says banks individually don't create new money. They are just financial intermediaries taking deposits and lending out loans. However, all the banks together through their collective actions play the larger role of creating new money in society. The banks do this collectively through what is called the money multiplier process. Now, what is this money multiplier process? Let's try to understand this in a simple way. According to the process, money supply in society multiplies as a result of connected activities of all the banks. Still confusing, right? Okay, let's understand the money multiplier process with an example. Let's say bank number 1 gives you a loan of rupees 10,000. You take it and straight away deposit that rupees 10,000 into bank number 2. Later that day, bank number 2, which received rupees 10,000 from you, gives a loan of rupees 10,000 to someone called ABC. Now, ABC takes that rupees 10,000 loan from bank number 2 and deposits it into bank number 3. Later that day, bank number 3, which received rupees 10,000 from ABC, gives a loan of rupees 10,000 to someone called XYZ. Now, according to the money multiplier process, the total money supply in society is not rupees 10,000, which is circulating. Instead, it says the total money supply is rupees 30,000. Why? Because rupees 10,000 was loaned out by different banks to different people three times. Therefore, rupees 10,000 loaned out and deposited three times means the money supply in society has multiplied three times. Therefore, the total money supply is rupees 30,000. Well, we know very well that this is actually not true. All that is there is just rupees 10,000. It's the original rupees 10,000 that you took as a loan from bank number 1. It's just that it circulated and exchanged hands three times. New money did not get created. It's a strange theory. Some of you are even thinking this is ridiculous. But this is what the money multiplier process is. It is the backbone of the fractional reserve theory. Many banking industry insiders say the money multiplier process is dangerous for the economy because it causes banks to collapse from time to time. Now, this fractional reserve theory was in vogue from the 1930s till the 1960s. Many reputed economists supported this theory, such as Friedrich Hayek and Joseph Stiglitz. But during the 1960s, it was decided to drop this theory and bring in a new one. So, a third school of thought called the financial intermediation theory was adopted. This theory further plays down the money creation role of banks. Instead, it says banks are just financial intermediaries. They just deal with deposits and loans. Individually and collectively, banks have no role in adding to the money supply. Many top economists have supported this theory, such as Raghuram Rajan, Anil Kashyap, John Maynard Keynes, Ben Bernanke, and Paul Krugman. This financial intermediation theory is now the widely accepted banking theory. The others almost don't exist. The credit creation theory, in particular, is history. Almost no one remembers it, and therefore almost no one knows that high street banks magically create money out of thin air. German economist Richard Werner, who invented the concept of quantitative easing in 1994, supports the credit creation theory. He says banks are definitely tasked with manufacturing money out of nowhere. He conducted a real world experiment at a bank and proved that all banks electronically create new money when they give loans. Warner published his findings in the finance journal International Review of Financial Analysis in 2015. In that paper, he explored exactly why the credit creation theory has been hidden away. Why is it that most powerful people in the financial world don't want the public and governments to realize that banks create money out of thin air? Banks create 97% of the money supply in society. Why is this vitally important role kept in the dark? It's not there in textbooks and discussions. Why the secrecy? Here's a possible explanation. Richard Warner speculated in his paper a likely reason why the credit creation theory is ignored. He feels the whole mystery is connected to multilateral banks, such as the World Bank, the IMF, Asian Development Bank, EBRD, and many more. The argument is that the credit creation theory questions why poor countries should take loans from multilateral banks based in rich countries. You see, if a country's domestic banks can comfortably produce 97% of the money supply out of thin air, then there is no need for that country to take loans from the World Bank and the IMF, isn't it? If domestic banks are doing the job, then why go to foreign banks for help? They are not angels. They charge very high interest rates on the loans they give, and they try to dictate policy after giving the loans. If poor countries realize that their own banks can take care of the domestic money supply, then they can simply stop borrowing from outside. Once that happens, their economies will become decolonized or independent, with no need for external loans and therefore no foreign interference. So, Richard Warner and many others like him feel this is precisely why financial decision makers in wealthy countries dislike the credit creation theory. The moment poor countries realize the power of domestic banks, imperialist countries such as those from G7 and China won't be able to dominate them through loans. It's vitally important for some countries to wake up to the reality shown by the credit creation theory and stay away from foreign loans. We are talking about countries such as Bharat, Bangladesh, Nepal, Sri Lanka, and then those in Africa and South America. Real economic freedom lies in surviving on your own money, not on loans from imperial powers. Richard Warner explains it well in his 2015 paper. A large number of developing countries and emerging markets have accumulated large amounts of foreign debt. This debt was invariably denominated in foreign currency and needs to be serviced at interest. The large and rising amounts of payments to service their foreign debt may explain what otherwise is a puzzle in economic theory, namely, why international financial flows seem to be directed from poor countries to rich countries. As a result, a transfer of net resources from the less well off countries to the rich countries has been taking place, putting the former ever more at the mercy of the latter. So now we know not just how banks create new money out of nowhere, but also why this role of banks is suppressed, so that rich countries can keep poor countries distracted and financially dominate them. A country such as Bharat has a long history of taking big fat loans from foreign banks. These loans come with strings attached, and servicing them is a costly affair. Our question is, common people naturally are not supposed to know all this. But what about the people in power, RBI officials, government advisors, and think tanks? Why can't they take it up? Think about it. Till then, happy banking. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Don't forget to press the bell icon so that you get notified whenever we publish a report. Follow us on Twitter and Facebook. Send get updates to 982104573 for news and analysis you are not told. Visit our website empirediaries.com for in depth reports and columns. Stay informed, stay awake, and think critically.